Welcome back to High Stakes. Elevate your betting game by hitting that subscribe button and ensure you never miss out on our daily content. Want exclusive access to premium betting picks? Join our Patreon. Links are waiting for you in the comment section below. Stay ahead of the game with High Stakes. In today's video, we'll be offering our expert predictions for a slate of thrilling matchups on the horizon. Arizona State versus Kansas State, Tennessee versus Georgia, Oregon versus Wisconsin, New Mexico State versus Texas A&M, UAB versus Memphis, Wake Forest versus North Carolina, Cincinnati versus Iowa State, Washington State versus New Mexico, Kansas versus BYU, and San Diego State versus UNLV. Stay tuned as we dive into an in-depth analysis of each game. Arizona State versus Kansas State. Kansas State has struggled as a large favorite this season, going 0-4 against the spread when favored by more than one possession. However, I expect the Wildcats to get the job done this Saturday. Coming off a bye week, Kansas State will be fresh and motivated to stay in the Big 12 championship race. They'll be facing an Arizona State team with a similar style of play, as both squads prefer to run the ball. However, Kansas State's offensive line is superior, and they'll pave the way for DJ Giddens to have a productive game on the ground. Arizona State will likely be forced to rely on its passing game, but with Kansas State ranking 8th in rush defense, that's not a formula for success. Take Kansas State to cover the spread. Prediction: Kansas State -9 points. Kansas State's defense ranks among the best in the nation, sitting 36th in defensive scoring and allowing fewer than 100 rushing yards per game. These two key stats will put significant pressure on Arizona State's offense. Meanwhile, Kansas State's offense will control the clock, managing the game and draining valuable minutes off each drive. The under is 3-1 when Kansas State has been favored by 8 or more points this season. Take the under on Saturday. Prediction: under 50. Tennessee versus Georgia. The SEC continues to deliver exciting matchups, and this game between Tennessee and Georgia is shaping up to be another thrilling contest. After suffering a loss on the road to Ole Miss, Georgia returns home looking to regain their confidence. The Bulldogs have dominated Tennessee, winning 7 consecutive matchups, but this year's Vols team is a different beast and is eager to make a statement in 2024. The key factor in this game will be the status of Tennessee's key players, particularly quarterback Nico Iamaleava and wide receiver Squirrel White. If both are healthy and ready to go, it's hard to justify Georgia laying such a large spread, especially on the road. Tennessee's offense, similar in style to Ole Miss, features a mobile and accurate quarterback and one of the best offensive lines in the country. This unit creates space for the running game, which then sets up big passing plays. Georgia's Carson Beck has been solid, but has struggled with interceptions at crucial moments, which has cost the Bulldogs in big spots. These turnovers could again prove problematic in this game, especially given Georgia's turnover issues. 4 fumbles lost last week and a negative turnover margin of -0.5 per game, ranking 99th in the nation. Defensively, Tennessee holds the edge. The Vols have allowed just 12.6 points per game this season, with only one opponent, Arkansas, scoring more than 19 points. This is all the more impressive considering the high-scoring nature of the SEC. Georgia continues to be overvalued in the betting markets, having covered the spread only once in their last 8 games and posting a 2-7 ATS record this season. Despite the injuries, it's likely that key players will be available, as this game is critical for both teams. Even if Iamaleava is out, Tennessee's running game and defense remain a significant strength. Take Tennessee +10. As for the total, both teams have trended toward the under this season, which is a testament to their strong defensive play. Last week's game between Ole Miss and Georgia ended 28-10, well under the 55.5 total. The line for this matchup reflects the anticipated defensive battle, with a total set in the low 40s. The last time Georgia and Tennessee faced Kentucky, they both struggled to hit the over, with Georgia winning 13-12 and Tennessee narrowly hitting the over with a 28-18 win. With both defenses playing at a high level, expect numerous stalled drives and a low-scoring affair. Georgia has struggled to convert third downs, converting just 38% of the time, while Tennessee has been great on defense, allowing only a 26.3% third down conversion rate. Look for a tight, defensive game and take the under. Take the under 48.5. Oregon versus Wisconsin. The spread for this game is hovering around 14.0 to 14.5 points, and I feel much more comfortable with the former. This is already a sizable spread, so finding a 14.0 on the market is key, as it represents a critical 2-touchdown threshold. Even with the large number, I'm confident Oregon will cover. The Ducks' offense has been a juggernaut this season, led by Dillon Gabriel, who continues to impress. Oregon boasts the 15th best passing offense, averaging 287.7 yards per game. As a whole, their offense is putting up 36.5 points per game, ranking 20th in the nation. If Oregon reaches even the low 30s in this game, they should have no trouble covering the spread. Wisconsin, on the other hand, is not built to play catch-up, and frankly, it's unclear what they are built for offensively. With struggles on that side of the ball, I expect the Ducks to move to 11-0 and cover this sizable spread. Prediction: Oregon Ducks minus 14 points. As for the total, it's rare to see a game involving Wisconsin with a total in the 50s, especially at Camp Randall. For Wisconsin to keep this competitive, their defense will need to step up. They've been solid on that side, allowing 22.5 points per game, which ranks 39th. Being in Madison, I believe Wisconsin can hold Oregon to somewhere in the range of 28 to 31 points, which should keep the total under the current line. On the offensive side, Wisconsin has been brutal. They average just 25.1 points per game, ranking 94th in the nation. However, that figure is somewhat misleading. In 3 games against ranked opponents, Alabama, USC, Penn State, Wisconsin has averaged only 14.7 points per game. Now they face an Oregon defense that's allowing just 16.2 points per game, ranking 9th nationally. I expect Wisconsin's offense to struggle throughout the game, which is why I'm leaning toward the under. Prediction: under 52.5 points. In the upcoming matchup between Texas A&M and New Mexico State, the Aggies from Texas A&M are the clear favorites. Their defense has been formidable, ranking 39th nationally in rush defense, which is significant given that New Mexico State's offense tends to focus on the ground game. Additionally, Texas A&M's passing attack has been effective, especially with the recent addition of quarterback Marcel Reed. New Mexico State has struggled defensively, ranking near the bottom in several categories, and their passing defense is ranked 116th nationally. This disparity suggests that Texas A&M will be able to exploit these weaknesses, potentially covering the 39.5 point spread. Prediction: Texas A&M Aggies minus 39.5 points. Offensively, Texas A&M has been productive, averaging 30.9 points per game, while New Mexico State has allowed an average of 37.1 points per game. This indicates a potential for a high-scoring game. The over has hit in 3 of Texas A&M's 5 home games and in 3 of New Mexico State's 4 road games, suggesting that betting on the over could be favorable. Prediction: over 54 points. UAB versus Memphis. I'm taking UAB to cover the 14-point spread on the road against Memphis this Saturday night. While UAB has struggled this season with a 2-7 record, Memphis, sitting at 8-2, has been solid on paper. However, a 14-point spread's hefty, and both teams have seen a shift in their recent performances. Despite their strong overall record, Memphis' defense has been porous in recent weeks, allowing a lot of points and keeping opponents in games. Over their last 4 contests, Memphis has not covered a 14-point spread, with their largest victory margin being just 8 points. On the flip side, UAB has been more competitive, covering a 14-point spread in 3 consecutive games and showing offensive firepower led by quarterback Jalen Kitna. I believe the Blazers can keep it within 2 scores. Prediction: UAB plus 14 points. This game is shaping up to be a high-scoring affair, and I'm leaning toward the over on 62.5 points. Memphis has been putting up points all season, and while their defense has faltered, Their offense has stepped up, averaging 37 points per game over their last 4 games, while allowing 34 points per game during that stretch. UAB has also been scoring, with a 59-point outburst in their recent win over Tulsa and at least 23 points in 3 straight games. With Jalen Kitna leading the charge against a vulnerable Memphis defense, I expect this game to hit the over. Prediction: over 62.5 points. North Carolina versus Wake Forest. While North Carolina doesn't boast the most dominant passing offense in college football, quarterback Drake May's backup, Criswell, has shown enough ability to keep Wake Forest's questionable defense under pressure. Add the dynamic running back Hampton to the mix, and with the Tar Heels' recent momentum, they should be able to cover the 2-touchdown spread at home against their rivals. North Carolina has had its struggles against spread this season, posting a 2-6-1 record overall and 1-4-1 as favorites. However, they have covered easily in their last 2 dominant victories over Virginia and Florida State, and Wake Forest has not been able to defeat the Tar Heels in the past 3 seasons of this rivalry. Prediction: North Carolina minus 11 points. Expect another high-scoring affair, as the North Carolina-Wake Forest matchups have consistently been shootouts in recent years, with an average combined score of 98.3 points since 2020. Wake Forest has been hitting the over consistently this season, going 6-3 overall and 4-1 as underdogs and in conference play. Prediction: over 64 points. Both teams are in desperate need of a win to snap their recent losing streaks, but despite Iowa State's struggles, they appear to be the stronger side and are heavily favored to bounce back against their conference rival. Iowa State has posted a solid 5-4 record against the spread this season and is 4-1 when coming off equal rest. Meanwhile, Cincinnati is 4-4-1 ATS and has struggled when on equal rest, going 1-3-1 in those situations. In their most recent matchup, Iowa State dominated Cincinnati, winning 30-10 in 2023. Prediction: Iowa State minus 8.5 points. When it comes to the total, both teams have been more defined by their defensive play this season. Cincinnati has allowed an average of 22.2 points per game, ranking 6th in the conference. Their red zone struggles, paired with Iowa State's strong defensive backfield, suggest that the under is the smarter choice here. Cincinnati has hit the over just 3 times in 9 games and is 1-1 when playing on the road. Iowa State, on the other hand, has a 5-4 over-under record with a more balanced approach to scoring. Prediction: under 53.5 points. Washington State versus New Mexico. Covering double digits on the road is always a challenge, especially as the season enters its final stretch, and this holds true for Washington State. While the Cougars have had a solid season, they're gearing up for a bowl game and may not be as focused as they need to be in this matchup. Washington State has a 3-1 record on the road, but their largest margin of victory has been just 8 points, which came in a game at Fresno. Both teams recently faced off against the same opponent, San Diego State. New Mexico won 21-16 on the road, while Washington State won 29-26 in a closer contest. This highlights Washington State's porous defense, which will likely allow New Mexico's offense to remain competitive. The Lobos have a dynamic rushing attack, ranking 8th in the nation, and Washington State's 81st ranked rush defense, allowing 160 yards per game, is vulnerable. New Mexico's offense is averaging 33.4 points per game, ranking 30th in the nation, and they will be able to exploit Washington State's defensive weaknesses at home in Albuquerque. Prediction: New Mexico plus 12.5 points. With a total set at 70+, this game is expected to be high-scoring, and for good reason. Both teams have shown they can score, and neither has been particularly strong on defense. New Mexico has surpassed 50 points 3 times this season, including a 45-point performance against Wyoming. Washington State's defense has struggled, which will allow the Lobos to continue their high-scoring ways. Despite Washington State's 4-5 over-under record, they have had explosive games, clearing 40 points in 2 of their last 3 games and hitting 50 points earlier against San Jose State. Their last game also went over the 68.5 total as their defense allowed Utah State to score 4 touchdowns and rush for nearly 200 yards. Both teams rely heavily on the run, which keeps the clock moving, but also generates big plays and scoring opportunities. The over-under line has been adjusted to account for this, but it still feels too low considering the offenses involved. Prediction: over 72 points. Kansas versus BYU. This game presents a challenging matchup for BYU as they host a Kansas team that has far more talent than their record suggests. Last season, Kansas defeated the Cougars 38-27 in Manhattan, and much of their offensive core remains the same. The key advantage for Kansas in this game is their dominant rushing attack, which plays directly into BYU's defensive weakness, allowing nearly 150 rushing yards per game. Kansas is averaging over 200 rushing yards per game, and last week, they piled up 237 yards on the ground in their victory over Iowa State. Expect more of the same here as they take control of the game with their running game. BYU, on the other hand, hasn't faced the toughest competition recently, going up against teams with losing records in their last 5 games. Last week, they struggled against Utah, needing a holding penalty to keep their drive alive for a game-winning field goal and finishing with only 22 points. Kansas' superior firepower, particularly in the rushing game, should be the difference here. The Jayhawks need to avoid turnovers from quarterback Jalen Daniels, but overall they have the better team. Take Kansas plus 3 points. Prediction: Kansas plus 3 points. BYU has been scoring 33.7 points per game, but they've benefited from facing defenses ranked 100th or worse, aside from Utah, who shut them down to just 22 points. Kansas' defense isn't as stout as Utah's, but they've been effective, allowing 25.9 points per game, which is far fewer than BYU's typical opponents. Kansas ranks well in key defensive categories, including 42nd in sacks, 2.3 per game, 8th in penalties, and 26th in interceptions, 1.2 per game. Moreover, BYU has struggled on third downs, converting just 29.8% of their attempts, which points to coaching issues and stalled drives. Kansas will stick to their ground game strategy, controlling the clock and limiting BYU's chances to score. As for the total, BYU has gone over in 7 of their 9 games this season, but this 56.5 total is their highest of the year and feels inflated. Given the way both teams play, Kansas focusing on the run and BYU's offensive struggles, it's hard to see this game hitting the over. Prediction: under 56.5 points. San Diego State versus UNLV. UNLV comes into this conference showdown as the team on the upswing, having won 3 of their last 4 games, while San Diego State has lost 3 in a row. The Rebels' strong suit is their ground game, which has been rolling, including a dominant 290-yard rushing performance in their last game. Facing an Aztecs run defense that ranks a lowly 112th in the nation and allowed 300 rushing yards in their previous contest, UNLV's running attack will be a significant factor once again. San Diego State doesn't boast a high-scoring offense, but their ground game is solid. Unfortunately, they'll be facing a tough UNLV run defense, making it hard for them to keep up with the Rebels' explosive rushing attack. Although the Aztecs won't win this one, they should be able to stay within the spread, as UNLV has struggled to cover in 4 of their last 5 games. Prediction: San Diego State plus 20.5 points. UNLV's offense ranks in the top 10 for points per game, but they haven't had a high-scoring game in the last 3 matchups. This trend points toward a more modest scoring performance in this one. While the Rebels will dominate the ground game, they're unlikely to put up a huge point total. San Diego State's offense isn't explosive, averaging just 22 points per game over their last 3 games. Given the styles of both teams, this game should be competitive but low-scoring, making the under the safer play. Prediction: under 54.5 points.